But what is a soul? The soul is the sum total of your thoughts, your feelings, your ideas. A living mind. The question is, how does one come to the conclusion of understanding God? And Maimonides teaches us that a human being can only truly understand God, if the human being is a master of his or her emotion. Because if you're frustrated, if you're angry, if you're self-indulgent, your conclusions will automatically not be correct. You see the world, you see ideas through the lenses of your experience and your desires. And only a person who has learned to become a master of his emotions can truly understand truth, profound truths. Because if you are self-indulgent, if you are self-deluding, you will always come to a conclusion that will satisfy your own delusions. That's what Maimonides actually says. And that's why he says there's a difference between the Jew and the Gentile. The Jew was given a Torah. And because the Jew was given the Torah, by adhering to that Torah, the Jew learns a certain set of self-disciplines and a set of balances that allow the Jew to recognize universal truths, to recognize them in a correct fashion, because, for better or for worse, supposedly, if you follow the Torah, you won't delude yourself, you become a master of self. But however, he says, the great philosophers never really came to the knowledge of God. They understood the principles that would lead you to the knowledge of God. But they never actually got there. Why, he says? He gives an analogy. They had the keys to the treasure house, but they never had the key to the palace. They could get into, if they were in the palace, they could get to the treasure house and take out the treasures. But since they never had a key to the palace, they never were able to get in. The Jew, however, was given the keys to the palace and has to figure out how to break into the treasure house. What is he saying? He's saying that the palace is the area of human emotions. If you don't know how to deal with human emotions, you don't know how to become a master of self, your conclusions will always be skewed. They will never be accurate, correct. Does that mean that the scientists don't understand science? No. He says that in order to understand God, you have to become a master of self. Because all of the nations of the world created God in their own image. They wanted a God to forgive their own failings. That's the reason why the Christian world had to have Jesus forgive them for their sins. Because they wanted a God like themselves, who would accept themselves. The Jews never made a God in their own image. You read the Torah, they worshiped the golden calf. God says, I'm going to get even with you. They went ahead and told Moses, we ain't going to this promised land. God said, you know what? You guys, you're the wrong people. I'm going to wait until the next generation grows up and I'll take them into the land of Israel. Even Moses, if he wasn't exactly right for the generation, could not be the leader. Because you see, in order to go forward, in order to be able to get to the truth, there can be no self-delusion. The person is never above the law. The person is never above truth. The nations of the world want a God that will allow them their errors. God says, I will allow you your errors if you change. But I, God, have not changed. I am the God of truth. You can't make me in your image. And that's the difference between a Jew and a Gentile. The Jew recognizes that he can't make God in his own image. He cannot go ahead and alter what God is all about. He's got to change to fit in with God, not God to fit in with man. And only the Jews have been able to do that consistently. And you say, well, what about the Muslims? Allah is a reflection of the violence of the nature of the people who expressed it. God is neither violent nor benevolent. God is above all. And God does what is necessary. God desires benevolence and goodness. God does not say that God's word will be accomplished by the sword. So God is not Allah. God is the God of the Torah. And so we come now to the concept of what a soul is. According to Maimonides, the soul is that which understands God, not as something which is reflective of man. That awareness is the godly soul. And that the Jewish people have more than the nations of the world. It is that understanding that in Tanya is called the godly soul. The difference between Tanya and Rambam is, Maimonides says, the Jewish mind has to come to this conclusion and become aware of God throughout a lifetime. The Tanya says the Jewish mind has that as part of its nature. And the purpose of the Jewish soul and the Jewish mind is to then conquer the physical world according to those teachings. That being said, this is the godly soul. The difference between the Jew and the Gentile is how we perceive God. Whether we perceive God in our own image, a la Jesus, or whether God is independent of man, and God is truth, and man has to fit in.